Hello. I read about the magic crystal in the book. I'm going on a journey to find it. Do not worry, I never stop telling stories. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. I have never posted here before or felt compelled to tell anyone my story. I came across the Three Kings on the front page of Reddit last night and thought I would give it a try, especially after reading the post that it could be explained partially through a scientific method of being psychological. Here is what went on last night. I read the post at around 7:30 p.m. last night and thought it sounded like a very fun experiment. I text my brother-in-law to come over and to bring his big mirror off his dresser. He asked why I told him to check out the top post over on No Sleep and he immediately called me. The Three Kings thing? He asked. Yup. Sounded like something we could get a kick out of. I replied, then went on to explain the face in the mirror study and how I thought this would be one hell of a good time. I really should have taken things more seriously, I suppose, but, as they say, hindsight is the best sight. He showed up around 9 with his mirror and a large pillar candle. I already had my basement set up the rest of the way. 3 recliners, 1 brown facing north, 1 green facing east, 1 purple facing west. I propped the mirrors up in the east and west facing chairs, set up a pedestal fan on low directly behind my north facing throne, placed a bucket of water directly between the east and west facing chairs, and placed another bucket upside down directly in front of the throne to put the candle at a height that my body would block the fan from blowing it out. We went back upstairs, making very sure to leave the basement door open, and sat down to play a little TF2. Around midnight I told him I would be stretching out for a bit and that if he heard my alarm go off and I did not wake up, come shake me. 3:30 p.m. came faster last night than on any night before. I swear I had barely plugged my phone in and shut my eyes before I was out. I dreamed very vividly during those 3.5 hours. I was riding in the back of an ambulance and let out in front of a large building made completely of glass. I stepped out and the man that had opened the door simply said, "Go, now." I ran to the building and the door opened as I approached. Looking across the building I could see what can only be called a werewolf being let on the other side. In my dream state, I attempted to go back the way I came in to no avail and began running upwards to try and escape, many times only a glass wall separating me from the werewolf on the other. The dream had no end. I simply woke to my alarm at 3:30 p.m., grabbed my fully charged cell, a lighter, the candle, and a small cedar keepsake box, my power item, and headed from my room to the basement. "You ready for this?" asked my brother-in-law. "Absolutely," I replied. "Remember, do not touch me. Yell first, then lights, then call me, then the bucket, got it?" "Yup," he replied and went back to TF2. I lit the candle and headed down into the dark basement, closing the door behind me. The only sound was the soft whir of the fan as I went to the chair. I checked my phone one last time. 3:32? Perfect. I sat down, placed my candle on the bucket ahead of me, lighter in my left pocket, cell phone in my right, my cedar box situated between my knees, and stared off into the distance beyond the mirrors. It was very quiet. That was the first thing I noticed. The fan seemed to have quieted to nothing, and the basement was silent as death. Here I heard something whisper from the left. I almost turned and reminded myself that I was not to look at the mirrors. Here, again. Here. It's over here. More and more insistent each time. Look over here. The voice was so demanding it sent chills through my entire body. No, I replied simply, surprised at how small and weak my voice sounded. No, I will not look. Stop asking. Good from the right this time. You were always so dutiful, but why have you given up trying? I felt a weight press on my right knee, almost as if someone placed a hand there. It was immediately gone. I see in my peripheral vision the mirror on the right almost rippling like water. The mirror on the left seems to be spiraling inward with movement. You never listen from the left. That's why these things happen. You never learn to listen. That's why I've come for you. More and more aggressively. There are no second chances, there are no other options. You will pay for it, and you will pay what I want to take. From the right. There is no reason not to pay back what is owed to him. Give him what he wants, just take a glance. No, I gripped my box tighter. What is this? I asked. What am I hearing? From the left, judgment. From the right, fate. In unison, you should have just let him catch you and been done with it. The dream immediately came back to mind. It was only a dream, I whispered, just like this is. This is no dream, fool. Came the voice from the left. You were never good at entertaining new ideas, fool. Came the voice from the right. Now accept what has to happen. A splash of cold water awoke me from whatever it was going on around me. I looked up from the floor to see my brother-in-law standing over me with an empty bucket, lights on fully above me. What the hell, man? I called you 5 times before I turned on the lights and stood here yelling before I soaked you. What the hell, man? I don't know, I replied, looking down at my cell and seeing the missed calls. At 4:35 p.m. there were 5 missed calls. I really have no idea. It was 4:35 p.m. What do you call a werewolf with no legs? Anything you like. He can't chase you. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. My mother tried her best to keep me and my brother, Miles, out of the woods behind our house. It was too dangerous, she'd say. We could trip and fall and hurt ourselves. We could get lost. 2 little boys could get into all kinds of trouble out there. She went so far as to have an 8-foot fence erected around the backyard, and she padlocked its gate. For some, that may have been enough. Inconvenience killing curiosity, but for me and Miles, it only made what lay beyond all the more tantalizing. It was weeks before we finally got our chance to slip out the front door unobserved. Mom was distracted with an overflowing toilet, and Miles nudged me with a conspirator's nod over his shoulder, signaling the time had come. We crept along the hall, down the stairs, and across the foyer, where we grabbed our hats and jackets before making a break for it. It was a cool autumn day, and the leaves crunched noisily beneath our feet as we rounded the house. We were moving fast, nervous that Mom would realize we'd disappeared, and we crossed through the tree line at a near sprint. The late afternoon sun spilled through the leaves in glittering columns, casting the woods in a golden glow, and I followed Miles with a wide-eyed grin, both nervous about breaking the rules and mesmerized by this forbidden place. My big brother took the lead, carelessly stomping his way through the underbrush. We ran and climbed over fallen trees and laughed, unconcerned with the passing of time or that Mom might become worried. We were too enveloped in our mischief. A gentle incline took us down to a stream, and we trailed along beside it for a time, pausing occasionally to skip any suitable stones we found along the way. "Do you think Mum's gonna be really mad?" I asked. For the first time since we'd made our escape, I'd taken a good look around while Miles lined up another rock and realized that our house and its fence were no longer in sight. I wasn't even certain which direction we'd come from. The woods suddenly seemed so much bigger, intimidating, even, and I felt very small. Miles clapped me on the shoulder and grinned with all the confidence of a 10-year-old boy who knew he was up to no good but was certain he could talk his way out of it. "It'll be fine, Warren, we'll go back soon. She probably hasn't even noticed we're gone yet." I nodded, smiling as well. If Miles said it was okay, then it had to be, and onward we went. But Miles hadn't taken into account just how far we really had wandered or just how late it really was. We had just started talking about turning around when the sun, and the temperature along with it, began to sink. As the shadows began to grow around us, I grabbed Miles' hand and clutched it between my own. Usually, he never would have let me do that, but just then, he held on as tightly to me as I did to him. "See, come on," he said, the bravado from earlier fading as quickly as the light around us. "It's this way." We doubled back, following the stream until we reached its head again, and he started to lead me up the slope. Behind us, twigs snapped. I whipped my head around, but I couldn't see anything in the gloom that had settled across the woods. Miles gave my arm a tug. "It's nothing," he assured me. "Just a squirrel or something." I nodded, not entirely convinced, and we started to climb again. Another twig snapped, this one closer. "Miles," I whispered nervously. "It's nothing," he said again. The crunch of leaves being crushed slowly beneath a heavy footfall sounded right behind me. I screamed and Miles yelled for me to run. He hauled me the rest of the way up the incline and threw me in front of him. I scrambled, found my footing, and I was off. I could hear my brother clamoring behind me, his panicked breathing, and I dared to look back at him. His face was pale, his eyes dark saucers, and over his shoulder, outlined against the night, something was following. Something big. I turned back around and shrieked again. My legs pumped furiously beneath me, but I still felt slow, sluggish, and I kept stumbling on the uneven ground. Miles shoved me along more than once, shouting for me to go. Over our frantic cries, I could hear the thing behind us, its ragged, deep breathing, its leaden, pounding footsteps. And the smell. A cloying, rotting odor that stung my eyes and made it harder to breathe. My chest burned, my eyes stung with tears. I wanted to scream for my mother, but nothing would come out. Low-lying tree branches, invisible in the dark, clawed at my clothes, and upturned roots threatened to send me sailing headlong into the ground. If Miles hadn't been behind me, forcing me to keep going, my terror might have kept me rooted in place. I might have given up. "Warren." "Miles." It seemed like such a distant call, but we both recognized our mother's voice instantly. "Mommy." I screeched, "Mommy, help." Up ahead, still a fair distance away, I could see red and blue lights flashing through the trees. I could see the lights from the upstairs window of our house. "Mommy." I screamed again. "Mom." Miles joined in. "Boys." Beams of light turned towards us from either side and radio crackled. "We've found them," a man's voice said. We collapsed into our mom at the edge of the woods and all three of us fell to the ground, clinging to each other. "We're sorry." I sobbed into her shoulder. "We were being chased, something was after us," Miles said at the same time. The cop's mom had called to look for us, who had gathered nearby and were within earshot, immediately turned their flashlights back towards the woods. They shinned them slowly across the trees. Their eyes narrowed slightly, but all they found was an empty forest. "Oh no," Mum breathed softly. "Mommy?" I looked up at her and was confused by her expression, a thin-lipped, tight mask of fear. Wordlessly, she gathered us up and half-dragged us back towards the house, leaving the police still searching the darkness. "What's wrong, Mum?" Miles asked pleadingly. "Why couldn't you do as I say?" she moaned. "Why couldn't you stay in our yard?" "We're sorry," I said. "We won't do it again." "Oh, baby." She glanced down at me. "You don't even know what you've done. It wasn't you going into the woods that was the problem." She hurried us inside and slammed the door behind us, turning the deadbolt into place before looking at us again. "It's what you led back out." Outside, just beyond our fence, the cops began to scream. "Hello. The dragon is looking for this rabbit to eat it. I don't want to be a hero, but I can't sacrifice this cute bunny." Be sure to subscribe to my channel. I push open the heavy oak door. Snow flutters in through the open doorway. It's completely dark inside. The room smells moldy, like mildew, with a trace of canine hanging in the air. I have a dog at home, and recognized the oily scent of fur with a hint of musk. Maybe whoever lived here had a dog. It's getting dark outside too. The snow is really falling now, in swirling tufts instead of flakes. The wind screaming and howling at the snow for it to fall faster. I shut the door. Complete darkness engulfs me. I feel my way around the room. Strangely, a few embers are smoldering in the fireplace. I kneel down and blow the life back into the embers, convincing the reluctant wood to burn. Warmth cascades over my hands. It was at this point when I realized how cold I am. My fingers are numb and rigid, and I am shivering. I shuffle a little closer to the fire as a wave of drowsiness swept over me, and my hands slip onto the warm the stock of my rifle as I make my way into the forest, alert for every movement. Then, a flash of fur on the edge of my vision, and the light step of hooves on the snow-covered forest floor. An unsuspecting elk, grazing in a clearing. I drop down on all fours and crawl downwind of the elk lithe as a cat. I line up my shot, and blood dyes the snow red. I get up and walk to the elk, and start skinning it with my knife. Then I start dragging the heavy body of the elk towards the edge of the forest. I pause at a riverbank to catch my breath, but as I walk onto the surface of the long frozen river, I slip on the ice and fall face forward onto the cold stones in front of the fireplace. I must have dozed off. The fireplace is cold and filled with ash, the brilliant radiance of fire long gone. Well, there's no hope of lighting that up again, I thought gloomily. I walked to the table. There was a journal on it, titled, Journal of Damarcus. The name sounds familiar, but I can't recall when I've heard it before. Then I notice a metallic scent hanging in the air. A very familiar metallic scent. A scent which I smelled barely an hour ago. Blood. Cautiously, I get up and follow the scent, feeling my way around the room. In the darkness, I slip and fall onto the stones. The stones were smooth here somehow, smoother than the stone in front of the fireplace at any rate. No, not smooth, slick, with blood. But not human blood. The dead moose was barely 4 inches in front of my face. Its head turned to face the door. No, not head. What remained of its head? The left chunk of the head of the moose had been cleanly torn off. There were bite marks on what was left of its neck. How did a moose get in here? What killed it? These thoughts run through my head, as I try to remember the jaw width of my wolfhound, comparing them with the bite marks on the severed neck. They were of similar width. But a wolfhound doesn't have the dexterity and jaw power for doing this, I thought blearily to myself as another wave of the stench of the rotting elk hit me. I feel nauseous, and then from somewhere deep in the forest, something started howling. Winds buffeted me back as I struggled to walk. I dropped the elk and head towards the safety of a nearby village. I could pick it up tomorrow, it wouldn't rot, not in this weather. My fall hadn't helped with my sense of direction. I continue walking towards where I think the village lay, but now the blinding whiteness of snow obscured my vision. A blizzard had formed. I needed to find shelter fast. After an eternity of stumbling in the knee-deep snow, I glimpse a streak of brown. I double back, praying that I had really seen what I thought I did. And I found the hut rising out of the bleak white expanse. Shelter. I tried to push the snow out of my way. Now I realize how stupid describing legs as a leader is. My legs aren't lead, they're fucking permafrost. I can't feel my lower body now. I think the hut is still in front of me. Not sure how far it is. Wait. I don't think. Don't move my legs now. You know what, fuck this, I'm screwed. I can't even see the hut and it's probably just 5 meters in front of me. I'm going to die out here. At times like this, I wish I was religious, so I would believe firmly that when I die, I will go to heaven. Maybe I'll find out. Maybe. It's just a wolf somewhere in the forest. The blizzard had stopped a while ago. Stars started to shine faintly, and the moon had risen high above the forest. Another howl, closer this time. Shuffling snow. Leaves crunching. The soft pat-pat sounds of paws on stone. Scratching at the door. The scratching stopped. My heart slowed a little. Blissful silence, broken by the loud thump of flesh against wood. Hinges creak. Something smashes into the door again. This time, pieces of wood fall off the inner side of the door. Another smack. Wood splinters along grains. Something tells me the door won't hold for long. I stand up, pointing my rifle straight at the door. The rifle is wet. I'm not sure if it will reload properly. I only have one shot at whatever was on the other side of the door. A loud thud as something charged at the door again. For a moment, I thought the door would hold, but the old rotting wood caved in to reveal a monstrosity of a wolf charging right at me. I pull the trigger. The rifle jolts my shoulder. The bullet flies straight towards the wolf. It hits the wolf's hide. The tip bends but does not penetrate. It falls uselessly to the ground. The copper and lead bullet. A memory comes back to me in a flash. Damarcus. The original werewolf. The wolf stops for a moment, appearing to be jarred by the impact of the bullet. Seizing this chance, I run straight for the door. The wolf bites my leg as I run past, tearing into flesh. I smash the rifle into the wolf with so much force that it snaps in half. The temporarily stunned wolf loosened its jaws, and I run with a limp into the forest. I collapse into the snow, but I realize that I feel no cold. Instead, indescribable agony was surging into its place, and I have a sickening feeling that this pain wasn't coming from the wound in my leg. I am turning into a wolf. And as I felt the last shreds of my human consciousness slip away, as another wave of scorching pain racks my body, as the world turned into a kaleidoscope of smell and hearing, I knew what they felt. 20 years since then, I have known for a long time that I would never age again, never be harmed by anything but silver and fire again. and never be truly human again. I am forever trapped, shackled by fate to live forever between the human and the canine world. I am driven by hunger and thirst, and pain. Pain most of all, the pain of transformation. Enough pain to want to tear into every living being around me so that they may feel some of the burning agony coursing through me. Even right now, when I am as human as I ever will be, I feel the dull ache of hunger pulling me towards human prey. So I am writing this as a note of caution. I could have been the stray dog you saw in the street last night. I could be your nice neighbor who is always polite and kind. I could be your daughter's nice, understanding teacher. Or I could be outside your door right now, practically tasting the smell of human flesh, hunger gnawing at me, ready to transform the instant you open the door. Hello, friends. What's a werewolf's favorite day of the week? Maybe the moon day? Be sure to subscribe to my channel. I love James more than I love life itself. I remember the day I gave birth to him. I looked at that little bundle of human in my arms with pure joy. He was beautiful with hazel brown eyes, just like his late father who, due to a thyroid disorder, passed before he was born. We got along well as just the two of us. Outside of my job, I spent nearly all my time with little James and rarely needed to entrust him to a babysitter. When he was 6, he expressed an interest in the piano when he saw Great Balls of Fire on TV one evening. We bought a baby grand within a month and had a music teacher come over once a week. He was a fast learner and I could see him playing at concert halls as an adult. At school, he was no different. He was a smart, well-behaved boy all through elementary school. At parent-teacher conferences, his teachers were sure to tell me what wonderful manners he had and how he was sure to always raise his hand before speaking. He was a pleasure compared to other more rambunctious boys, they would tell me. He wasn't your typical dirt-ridden little boy either. He was practically Victorian in how prim and proper he acted. Never would there be grass stains found on his knees. Never would he have to be told to take off his shoes before entering the home. He kept himself and the area around him clean as could be. That is until recently. Ever since he started junior high I noticed he's been messy. His hair, that is now kept longer, nearly shoulder length, is disheveled and his clothes often have holes in them. About a month ago, I politely reminded him he was due for a haircut. The only response I received was a grunt. I looked a little closer at him and realized a shave might be in order too. At dinner, he ate his food in a hurry, often chewing with his mouth open. And let me tell you, he ate a lot. Sometimes requesting third helpings of pasta and bread. When he made these requests, his mouth was often full of food, his manners had nearly fully dissolved. When I was doing the laundry, I had to use a spot cleaner on his clothes for the various stains found. This was never needed before but was another changed trait found in my previously spotless boy. On top of it all, he asked to cancel his piano lessons and now refuses to play anymore. The baby grand sits here unloved and unappreciated. Soon his temperament became apparent even to his teachers. He brought home a teacher's note that I had to sign. He had received detention for cursing at his history teacher, F-word in case you're wondering. James tried to assure me it wasn't a big deal but some kind of punishment had to be doled out. I settled on grounding him for a month and hoped that would set him straight. Well, that's when he really did it. A few days after this, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed his bedroom door slightly ajar. I looked inside and his bed appeared suspiciously flat. Out of anger at what I suspected, I ripped the blankets off the bed and confirmed he was gone. It was past midnight and his curfew was a solid 9 p.m., not to mention he was grounded. I didn't want to disturb anyone at such an hour, but I had to find out where he was and thought to call a few of his friends. As I picked up the phone, I heard a car door slam. I went to the front door to see him walking up the driveway. Before he had a chance to enter, I swung open the door and gasped at him under the patio light. What I saw was not what any mother would expect from a 13-year-old boy. His face was nearly completely covered in thick hair other than a small area around his eyes. I was speechless for a moment while I stared at him. I looked past him and towards the car that dropped him off and saw a girl at the steering wheel driving off. "James, what?" I started. "Nothing, Mum, Jesus. I was just out with a friend," he responded as though everything was perfectly natural. He pushed past me. Before he could get to his room I grabbed his arm, only to immediately let go in horror. What I felt beneath my palm was an unnatural coarseness. His arm was covered in hair. No, this was not hair. This was fur. I looked closer at his torso and I realized his shirt was torn at the neck seam. My eyes moved further down and my heart nearly stopped when I spotted what looked like a small stain of blood on his jeans. He shoved my arm away with his hand and I let out a shriek when one of his long nails scratched my arm. "Ow, James, you clawed me. What happened to you? Will you leave me alone?" he shouted while slamming his bedroom door shut. I stood outside the door for a moment but I was too scared to open it. Besides, I knew what I had to do. Teenage boys with this condition would only become more out of control as they developed into men. So I went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I'm now in my bedroom with my butcher knife on my lap. I know what you are thinking. You're thinking I raised him wrong. I raised a nice, good boy. What he has is a disorder. The disorder is lycanthropy and counts yourself lucky if you've never experienced it firsthand. He's a nearly full werewolf now and I know only one tried and true way to cure it. Hello, friends. Why was a werewolf arrested in the butcher shop? He was caught stealing in the store. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. My sweet, sweet Rosie von Zimmer. I fell for her the moment she entered the McDonald's I used to work on. Only 16, a cascade of silky black wavy hair falling graciously over her perfect shoulders, pale and delicate, adorned with a very thin necklace that was worth months of my income. She had 2 friends with her, but I guess I never registered their names or faces. Whenever Rosie entered a room, it was only her existence that mattered. She graciously walked to my counter and ordered. I remember she being the only one in her group not choosing Diet Coke, because if you gonna drink soda you gotta do it right. She commented on my tattoo. It's a beautiful deer on my forearm, adorned with flowers. A strong and gentle image, just like her. Just like my Rosie von Zimmer. It's not too much to say that it was the best moment of my life so far. She not only acknowledged my existence, she liked something about me. I had always been a classless bastard, working odd jobs to survive and help my sick mother and younger sister Frankie. I didn't want her to endure the hardships that I did, so I sent money home every month, even if it cost me a few meals, it did. At 21 I was exhausting myself with shift after shift and 3 hours of sleep a night, so I could help provide for my family and indulge my love for tattoos and music. It was 1988. I wouldn't dream of having music accessible everywhere. I love your tattoo! Rosie seemed genuinely excited, like a child, but with the voice of an angel. With confidence I didn't know I had, I smiled my best smile and thanked her without stuttering. The restaurant was nearly empty at that time mid-afternoon, so while my co-workers prepared her meal she continued the small talk. I wish I could make one, but my parents would kill me! Once again, she sounded so innocent. So sheltered and pure, it melted my heart. If you want, I can take you to the studio and you can make a small one in a hidden place. These words came out of my mouth before I even knew I was speaking them. I am both terrified and thankful by how they sealed our fates. She smiled so happily. I'd love to. Can you really take me? Her excitement was contagious, and I couldn't help but smile happily too. Sure. Whenever you want, miss, I replied, noticing I was being charmed again. I never considered myself shy or ugly, but I wasn't the opposite either. Up to that point, I had dated a little, some nice, cute girls, but no Hollywoodian beauty like her, and nothing serious either. Do you have a bike? She asked me, eyes wide with zest, pronouncing the last word like one talks about a forbidden paradise. I do, I attested simply. So please take me there tomorrow in your bike. I'll come at 5. And she grabbed her order. Being rich, she probably had no idea there was a concept called shift, but I made arrangements with my colleagues and was able to go with her. My bike was a rundown piece of crap, to be honest, but I loved it. She seemed to love it too. Can you lend me your jacket? She asked. My leather jacket was too old and run down like everything I owned, but she was amazed at the being poor experience. So she held me tightly and we went to my friend's studio. Leonard was my roommate and a good friend. He was very talented but worked in a very small studio in a crappy neighborhood. Everyone in the alternative scene knew him and loved his work, but he was far from being as prestigious as he should be. I always wanted a deer too. Do you mind me copying you? She gingerly asked me. Of course not! I smiled. Leo's tattoos are always unique, so we'll have a pair, not twin tattoos. Why don't you hang out with us after that? Leo invited her, something I was honestly scared to do. I knew nothing in our world would be on her level. But she smiled and agreed. She chose to have a small deer face inside an upside-down triangle tattooed a few centimeters under her breast and above her waist. On the left side, it was a place she could hide even when using bathing suits, as long as it wasn't a bikini. I almost died when she unceremoniously took off her shirt to get the work done and did my best not to stare at her milky skin, finely covered by the lacy baby blue apparel. A few tears escaped from her eyes as Leo dug the needle on her ribs, but she refused to openly cry. She wanted so much to be a badass. Your skin is a great canvas. Come back whenever you want. I'll even give you a discount since you're Frederick's friend, Leo offered. She loved the tattoo, and I instructed her about how to care for it so it heals nicely. Then she followed us to a shady bar that Leo, his girlfriend Lena and I went all the time. She and Lena clicked immediately, and later that night my friend drunkenly said, "Fred, you have to marry this girl." She thought she was whispering, but everybody heard her and laughed. Rosie was sitting by my side and put her arms around my neck. I don't know about marrying, but I really wanna kiss you right now. Kissing her was like floating in the space, the infinite bed of stars brushing softly on my skin as I passed by. I don't know how else to describe it. It was so magical, it was like there were only us in the universe. At that moment, nothing else existed: the shady bar, my dead-end job, my overdue bills, her parents. We became inseparable. Her friends would cover for her with lies about sleepovers, group projects and studying routines. They thought it was thrilling to sneak out and have sex with an older, tattooed guy. On our first month anniversary, Rosie bought me a new, amazing bike. I said I couldn't accept it, but she told me to stop being a fool. That's how rich she was. She would spend a lot of nights in my tiny 2-bedroom apartment, never seeming to be bothered by how precarious it was. Leo didn't mind, he was a lot at Linus or at the studio anyway. For the first time in my life, I thought I was allowed to be happy. Everything would be alright as long as I never got angry, and I couldn't see myself getting angry with the joyous life I was having. We started making plans. Maybe when I go to college you can come with me to another city. We can live together and my parents won't even know, she said, giggling at the idea of liberty. I was more than willing. I would work any physically consuming job with a smile on my face to be with my Rosie. I called her Doe because of her tattoo, but she insisted I was the one with doe eyes, so she called me Bambi, a funny but cute nickname if you're in love. We never fought. She sometimes didn't know how things worked in real life for people that aren't stinking rich, but I found it endearing. And she loved learning. She hated the idea of living her whole life being a sheltered little princess, isolated from the rest of a world that brimmed with life. She wanted to be a part of it. After celebrating our 7th month together in our usual bar, we started to make our way to the exit. I said I would catch her in a moment. In my dazzling happiness, I forgot how dangerous the world was. When I found her a minute later, she was physically fighting against a man and losing. She had sweat on her forehead from the struggle and a little blood on her arm. His face held unspeakable malice. I got so angry at the idea of someone violating in any way the precious woman I loved. I only remember sprinting in his direction in fury. I woke up the next morning to Rosie's worried face. It was clear that she had spent the whole night awake by my side. Freddy? Bambi. She broke down crying, and held me so tightly against her petite body I thought my bones were going to smash hers. Thank you for saving me. Did you? Yes. Do you wanna leave me? ? Hell, no. You're my protector and my savior, babe. I was grateful at the thought that she wasn't able to understand the gravity of what I had done. Whenever I get furious, I transform. I wouldn't say I am a werewolf, because the moon cycle has no impact over me, it's just my own emotions. But I sort of look like one at times. A hairy monster ready to devour anything that makes me feel rage, with claws and fangs dotted with superhuman strength. I get really scary, but fortunately, seem to be still able to discern friend and foe. My mother was the first to know about it, and she said my dad had it too. My sister doesn't know. We do our best to protect her. It's ugly. Every time it happens, I cruelly rip a human to shreds and eat their bloody remains, while drooling and snarling. Besides my mother, only Leo knows about it, because 2 years ago a violent man broke into our apartment, mistaking us for a drug dealer that lives in the complex. When I saw the stranger stabbing my friend, I literally destroyed him. Fortunately, Leo's injury wasn't too serious. But I wonder what could have happened to us if I didn't turn into a beast, and I don't regret having butchered the man. I never have any recollection of it, and I only know it happened because when I wake up the next morning my body hurts like I ran over by a bulldozer. It happened thrice during the first 18 years of my life, and those times I was alone or with my mother, then once with Leo and now once with Rosie. In my normal state, I am a very calm man. I despise violence, and I would never be furious enough for my beast side to be unleashed at a simple bar fight or couple-less quarrel. It only happens when I have to defend my life or the life of someone I deeply care about. Was I scary? I asked. A little, yes, she said. But you never showed animosity against me, just against the man. You erased his existence. It was kinda cool because it's you. After a few seconds feeling strangely happy to be accepted by the woman I love as the bloodlust beast I can be sometimes, I realized I screwed up. I was supposed to have taken her home the night before. Her parents weren't expecting her to sleep at a friend's that night. We had no cell phones back then. I had no phone at my apartment and Rosie said she was too scared to go out and look for a payphone, so nothing could be done. That was the day the von Zimmers found out about us. They called her friends' houses and their friends' parents told them Rosie wasn't there. The next day, they were at my door. They offered me a lot of money to leave Rosie, to move to another state and never look for her again. I refused and shoved them out. Rosie was grounded, but she sneaked out to see me one last time, and we made love desperately. I remember tasting the salt of her tears like it accentuated the sweetness of my love for her. I never told her about the offer, I just knew I would make it work somehow. I wouldn't mind if it took me a few years. This beautiful woman understood me and accepted me. I didn't care if she was doing all of it just to piss off her parents. I didn't care if she wouldn't wait for me, I would wait for her. The next time I woke up, I was in prison. They told me I unleashed the beast at Rosie and she was gone. They had eyewitnesses and a solid case against me. I was sentenced to a lifetime in prison. They said I was lucky I wasn't institutionalized. 30 years. 30 years I spent in jail, thinking about Rosie, trying to remember that night, trying to remember why. Why would I attack her? Why the beast in me would kill the best thing I had in my life. I did everything I could not go crazy. It was so hard just going through each day. My mother and sister visited me, always teary, but trying to put on a brave face. Leo showed up at least once a year, with Lena only for the first. After they broke up, he became a very famous tattoo artist. Knowing he was deservingly successful was pretty much my only solace. My family was doing terribly and my other friends had abandoned me. I asked Leo a million times what happened that night, but he told me he wasn't there. I behaved in prison. Learned jobs, minded my own business and never fought with the other inmates. The results could be catastrophic, and I hope to someday again walk the earth as a free man, at least to help my sister, just like our mother, that perished years earlier. She had developed Gaucher disease. I was released last year, and by that time Leo was terribly ill. He had lived a riotous life in the last couple of years and was left by his peers to die alone of Kaposi's sarcoma, and Hifes opportunistic disease. In his deathbed, my lifetime and an only friend confessed to me that he accepted money from the von Zimmers to them about my secret, and they made him tell the police I killed Rosie. Leo knew how powerful and dangerous they were, and he knew trying to oppose them would be a futile effort. If they decided they wouldn't let their only daughter date on anyone, their only daughter wouldn't date on anyone at any cost. I know he was right. I know I was naive to not accept their money to leave their daughter. But I stand by what I did. I am proud of the man I am. At first, Leo used the money to open a really nice tattoo parlor and live his dream, hanging out with the rich and famous, but soon the guilt started to eat him away, and he turned to the addictions. Wait! I screamed, after recovering from the initial shock. So what really happened to Rosie? What really killed her? Nothing really killed her, he said, and I hugged him despite his nasty blotched skin. Leo told me the von Zimmers had put Rosie in a mental institution for years because she was too depressed. After she was released, she never visited me because her parents paid good money to spread the information that I had died in prison. I even had a grave. Leo asked for forgiveness and told me he had found her current address. Didn't he wait until his funeral to get on a plane with borrowed money? As I knocked on Rosie's door, I expected her to be married, with kids, and have forgotten all about me. But she opened the door, and I only had a fraction of seconds to notice how beautifully she had aged before she threw herself into my arms. Bambi! I cried tears of joy as she let me in, and we talked for hours about what had happened. About how cruel everything was, how I thought she was dead and she thought I was dead too. Her parents even made her change her first name so my family or friends couldn't track her. Despite everything, I mentally thanked Leo, because I could only imagine discovering her whereabouts was a hard task. Rosie told me she hadn't lived a difficult life. After she was released from the mental ward, she went to college and found her passion in the arts. She became a locally well-known painter and was finally able to cut her parents off and make a comfortable living on her own. She then informed me she was still completely single and that I could kiss her. I thought you only dated me to piss off your parents, I said as I caught my breath during a heavy session of kissing. She tasted and felt exactly the same. At that moment, it was like the time had never passed, and we were young again. All my suffering seemed to be smaller faced with the largeness of being with her again. Silly Bambi. Even if it was true. They're still alive, you know? I still want to piss them off. I want to piss them off forever.